But guys, let's jump right into it. So, like I talked about in the intro, action-packed day today, and what better way to start off with than one of the best receivers in football being traded to another team? And no, I'm not talking about the Devontae Adams trade that happened last week in this action-packed free agency, but Tyreek Hill, 6-year player for the Kansas City Chiefs, 28 years old. I don't even know how I want to word it. Out of nowhere, out of left field, gets traded from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Miami Dolphins in one of the biggest packages that I think that I've seen in a long time, especially for a wide receiver. I think this might be the biggest package ever. I looked back into the archives on that Stephon Diggs trade 2 years ago that sent him from the Minnesota Vikings to the Buffalo Bills. That only included 4 picks. This one includes 5, and that package did not include a second rounder. It included a first and a couple later rounders, but a trade for Tyreek Hill commands a first, a second, a fourth in this year's draft, a future fourth, and a future 6th-round pick. The Miami Dolphins received Tyreek Hill, and in this trade, Tyreek Hill becomes the highest-paid receiver in NFL history after Devontae Adams just set that record just a week prior, now paying Tyreek Hill an annual average around $30 million per year, 4-year contract, $120 million. And according to Adam Schefter, the breakdown of this contract is that $52 million will be guaranteed when he signs that contract, so within the coming days. And the other $70 million will be guaranteed come the beginning of 2023. So basically 1 year's time, that's all he has to do is stay in Miami for 1 year, and his contract is fully guaranteed money. Guys, what was your immediate thoughts after seeing that Tyreek Hill, again, out of left field, gets traded from the Kansas City Chiefs?
I thought it was personally a joke, like a meme, that like nothing really big was going on trade-wise. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Hill got traded. Like, okay. And so I saw our group chat kind of explode a little bit when it was like, no, this is real and whatnot. I mean, ultimately, they had to do it because look out of like the 4 players getting paid the most on the Kansas City side, Mahomes being one of them. They couldn't afford Hill, and the fact is, Hill went to a team that's up and coming, so it's really going to help the development of Tua, but also develop that whole team as a whole in Miami. But when I saw that, I was like, nah, this can't be real. There's no way. And then I'm like, oh wait, this is real. It was mind blowing in my opinion. I mean, Miami gave up a lot, but he's an excellent number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah. Hank, what were your thoughts, man?
I was shocked too. And then the other thing I was thinking of was, wow, Kansas City, they just got weaker and weaker. And I don't know whether they're the worst team in the division at this point. I'm not 100% sure, but they are far worse off now than they were, say, 24 hours ago. That's for sure. And the Dolphins, hey, look, let me talk about the Dolphins real quick. I think now this is really Tua's best chance to show if he's for real. I think a lot of people have been downing the guy. I'm not one of them. I think now that he has the receivers, it's essentially put up or shut up time.
Yep. Listen, I agree with that. Hank, you kind of alluded to the fact, are the Chiefs the worst division in the AFC West? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to kind of deeply analyze what kind of went and took place today. So almost a roller coaster, because really this whole thing kind of transpired in a matter of an hour. From what it seems like, is that Adam Schefter reported that contract negotiations have stalled, and that the Chiefs have given Tyreek Hill permission to seek a trade. Probably about 20 minutes later, Jets and Miami become the favorites. Another 20 minutes later, Jets and Miami have both come to terms with the Kansas City Chiefs upon an agreed trade. But because I believe Tyreek Hill had a no-trade clause, he has the option to choose which team he would be traded to. And then another couple minutes later, he chooses the Miami Dolphins. And I wanted to kind of break this down a little bit with you guys too, because I'm sorry, as New Yorkers, I don't know if you guys have heard the backlash of Jets fans, the roller coaster of emotion. But to me, it kind of ticked me off a little bit because it's utterly ridiculous. All Jets fans were hyped out of their mind at the fact that there was a possibility that they could get a star-level caliber player up to Tyreek Hill's magnitude. And the fact that, guys, he's only 28. So the Miami Dolphins signed him to a 4-year deal. That's the prime of a receiver's career from the age of 28 to 32. And the guy's not slowing down. He's been a 6-time Pro Bowler in the 6 years that he's been in the NFL. He's one of the best receivers in the entire game. Just had a season in which he had his most receptions ever in a season by 30 receptions to his previous season of 80-something. Just had another 1,200-yard season, had a 10-plus down touch season this year. So another terrific year in the books for Tyreek Hill. And the minute the Jets fans lost at him, they're like, okay, we're good. We didn't get him. We're looking for the long-term future anyway. So we didn't need to give up five draft picks. We'll build towards the future and what we have in the draft. And the first thing that came to my mind is that you've been building for 12 years now. You haven't made the playoffs in 12 years. This was an opportunity to get your guy. Now, I'm not saying that the Jets had any fault in this. Obviously, 2 trades were agreed upon, and it was up to Tyreek Hill's decision to, make this decision where he wanted to go. And to be quite fair, and this is no knock against the Jets, it's just that you're comparing, apples and oranges here. Do you want to go to New York? Or do you want to go to, sunny South Beach, Florida, not have any state income tax, so that $120 million is all yours, already has the Super Bowl ring. Mm-hmm. And bottom line fact is this here too, because this is what I've heard from a lot of Jets fans today as well, is that it really didn't matter what team Tyreek Hill chose. They're both at the same standpoint. I'm sorry. They are so far miles apart from each other. It's not even close. Everybody wants to knock the Miami Dolphins. Yet just two months ago when Brian Flores was fired, and not rightfully so, I may add, because he had very successful years in 3 years that he was there, is that this was a team that just went 9-8 this year. So how can you compare that to a team that only won 3-4 games this year in the Jets? A team that was borderline playoff team, added a Teron Armstead, added 2 good running backs, added another offensive lineman in Connor Williams, and now just added a number 1 deep threat who's one of the best receivers in the game, fastest receivers in the game, to go along with a Jalen Waddle, who proved to be one of the best up-and-coming rookie receivers in the game, with a Mike Gesicki, with a Devontae Parker. How is that even comparable? The answer is it's not. I said it earlier today. I was on Down the Block Sports with Alec Walt. I said today's trade makes the Miami Dolphins at least an 11 or 12 win trade, which makes them competitive in that division, hands down. And everybody likes to knock Tua Tagovailoa. And granted, he has not had 2 fantastic seasons in his first 2 years. But the same thing that I feel that's happening to Tua Tagovailoa is the same thing that happened to Mitchell Trubisky. Is that you're a decent quarterback, but you're in the shadow of for Mitchell Trubisky, in his case, you're in the shadow of Patrick Mahomes and a Deshaun Watson. In this case, you're in the shadow of a Joe Burrow and a Justin Herbert. That's the shadow of Tua Tagovailoa right now. I don't think he's bad. And I think offensively, Mike McDaniel can get the best out of him with this team that he's surrounded himself with. Now, is he going to be a perennial Hall of Fame quarterback? No. But I think you'd still win with him, especially with the team that they've been put in place. The defense is dominant. So I just wanted to kind of get your guys' take on that as well. Is that obviously we're New Yorkers. We've heard all the banter all day. This happened early this afternoon. And I wanted to kind of get your take on whether or not, Tyreek Hill chose the right place. Is there actually a difference where he landed, whether it be the Jets or the Miami Dolphins, or what were your guys' overall thoughts?
I would say there's a big difference because, first of all, Miami is like Miami. It's a party city, South Beach, totally different atmosphere. Whereas you're in New York, you're in one of the biggest markets of professional football, and you're going to be under constant scrutiny for your actions. What we're forgetting is this is a guy who in the past has had some character issues. Now, granted, obviously we haven't really heard about that in, like, say, a couple of years, but how do you know stuff like that might not resurface if he comes to New York? And not to mention, you're playing in New York, you're going to be under a lot of pressure to perform. If Zach Wilson isn't the guy, isn't even as close to throwing to him as, like, say, Patrick Mahomes, or if anyone's at fault, he's going to get turned on immediately. So I think that's another thing you have to factor into that trade.
Well, to rebuttal, and James, then I'll throw to you, is that, Hank, I would agree with you, except for the fact that the Jets had agreed to a trade with the Chiefs. So they knew that into consideration. So that didn't play a factor at all. It just had nothing to do with his.
They might have dodged a bullet.
I mean, listen, we unfortunately, you don't know, and that very well could be the case. Who knows? But at the same point in time, you look at this Jets roster, and Jets fans are saying they're better off without him. Look at their receiving core. They have an Elijah Moore who's coming off a horrific injury, who I think is a good player. Corey Davis, who has proven that he cannot be a number one. His best season was when he was the number 2 with the Tennessee Titans, and that last year he's with the Titans alongside an A.J. Brown, who's injury prone as well, and a Denzel Mims, who was thought to be a sought-after second-round pick out of Baylor, and they don't even use him. You lost Jamison Crowder in free agency to the Buffalo Bills, and you added some nice pieces. But the defense is nowhere near as good as Miami's defense. The offensive line, I think, is kind of on the same line in terms of standard. The running backs are better for Miami. The quarterback play in terms of maybe tenure is maybe a little bit in the edge of a Tua Tagovailoa. And granted, while both these teams have rookie or young head coaches, Robert Saleh, I think, could be a very good coach. And both coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree, might add as well, kind of familiar faces. But Mike McDaniel, the way he's building this offense is almost identical to the way a Kyle Shanahan would build an offense. Running back by committee, good tight end play, solid enough quarterback play where he could win you NFL games. You just got to make sure the ball is not in his hands when it comes down to actually winning the game in terms of somebody else's hands. Dominant, versatile wide receivers. You had a Deebo Samuel and a Brandon Ayuk. Now you got a Jalen Waddle and a Tyreek Hill. And you have extremely dominant defenses in both Miami and the 49ers. It's almost a carbon copy of both teams. Tremendous left tackles, Trent Williams being the best, and now the Miami Dolphins have a Teron Armstead. Identical. So for Jets fans to be saying that they're better off without him, I just so far from agree with that statement. I'm not saying this would have made you a contender. I'm not saying this would have made you a playoff contender. But you know what? This was the opportunity, and it's not their fault, but this was the opportunity to see, hey, is Zach Wilson truly the guy? Now they have to deal with all those draft picks that they have, and granted, they have a lot of them. But now you're putting all your eggs into the basket of can Joe Douglas surround Zach Wilson with the right pieces? And we'll see what happens. But James, your thoughts, because I know I kind of went on a little tear there.
Sorry. My thoughts for it is, Hank, I agree with you. The Jets might have dodged a bullet, but I don't mean to knock the Jet fans, but they've had nothing to look forward to in God knows how many years. So they figured, I can get Tyreek Hill. They can fill up the stadium for 2 to 3 games, if not 4, and then be like, we suck again because Zach Wilson is hurt, or the offensive line sucks, or this or that. I don't to get the amount of draft capital that Miami gave up for the Jets that are somewhat still rebuilding is just mind-boggling. Would be a complete waste of time. It would probably set them back even further. If they think Zach Wilson is their guy, yeah, I'd say go after Hill. And since Hill didn't pick the Jets should just move on. No fan should be annoyed that, my team didn't do enough. It's like, no, if you look at Hill's contract, he could pick on where he was going. And it was Miami or the Jets. So Miami made the more logical sense, in my opinion, too. It's 85 and sunny 90% of the time down there. You don't have to deal with the media half the time. And if you screw up, the media is not coming after you most of the time. In New York, the media is coming after you. Fans are going to come after you. So he picked, honestly, probably the better option for him. For Jet fans, yeah, I feel bad because it's like, we could have gotten like a true number one. Like when we had Odell, like, holy shit, Odell's like amazing. But at the same time, we saw how the Odell incident finished in New York. So just coming from a Giants perspective, you might have dodged a heavy bullet there not having Hill in New York.
Well, I mean, forget about Odell. Look at the most recent example. You sign Kenny Golladay and say that's a number one. He finished off with 0 touchdowns. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, but Kenny Golladay isn't bringing all the media with
him. No, I'm not just talking about that because people, when they look at draft capital, they're not looking on the negative side. They're looking about can this guy perform on the field?
Well,
and I think without a doubt,
perform.
Tyreek Hill is going to ball out, especially next to a Jalen Waddle who is tremendous.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that Miami's in a really good position. I still think the Bills are the favorites, but to be quite frank, I think this puts them in a better position than the New England Patriots are. I think the Pats have, again, while Bill Belichick is always sneaky, and I know I'm going to be eating my words, is that they lost a lot of pieces this offseason. They haven't made any moves. They haven't looked to address any weaknesses, and an entire free agency has gone by. Now, granted, a lot of fans would say, well, that's because they spent all their money last year. But yeah, that doesn't mean you can't make adjustments to your team this year, especially the way you finished off the year in that historic playoff game in which you gave up 7 touchdowns, which was the worst game in Bill Belichick's entire career in the playoffs, nonetheless. So moves could still be made, but the Miami Dolphins, I think they've solidified themselves as a second option. And
They're a win-now team.
Well, I wouldn't say they're a win-now team.
Win now within the next 2 years, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got a bigger window than that just because everybody on that team is young. Even Hill, you just acquired a player of this magnitude. This is why it's so huge, is that he's in the prime of his career and he's only 28. Like, you don't get a top 5 receiver when he's hitting the market as a 28-year-old. That's why it's so rare and so special that the Miami Dolphins were able to do so in this fashion. Everybody else is young as well. So they're going to be here for a while. The biggest thing with this is why I love this trade so much for the Miami Dolphins is because of this. Is because you look at the AFC as a whole, right? There's probably 4 teams that were kind of sitting back, not really doing anything, right? You look at the Houston Texans. I mean, beside the Sean Watson trade, they didn't do anything. You look at the Jets, they made some small moves, but nothing so monumental and transformational. Tennessee Titans were sitting back as well, really not doing anything as well, with the exception of re-signing Harold Landry. And you look at the Miami Dolphins as well, is that, again, they signed a Teron Armstead last night, but make sure to go check out the video that Tom and I published last night about Teron Armstead. While we both think it's a good signing, I speak on behalf of myself when I say this, is that Tua Tagovailoa being a left-handed quarterback, the only one in the NFL, a left tackle is great, but for him, a right tackle is more important because that's the one protecting his blind side, not the left. So those were the 4 teams that really haven't done anything. The Miami Dolphins just put themselves in the conversation now with everything and what they've done today and the last couple of days since free agency has started, is they are the second best team in that AFC East. And they didn't sit back any further, looking at the AFC get better, each team get better and better every single day, and they had done nothing. Now they're putting their name into the ring, especially being that they just finished off at a 9-8 record. There should be no reason why they shouldn't win 10, 11 games next year after what they have done, especially with an offensive-minded guy. But, guys, kind of the last part of this trade, we kind of analyzed the perspective from the Dolphins, a little bit of the perspective from the Jets. But the most important team in all of this is the team that got rid of Tyreek Hill, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. And so a move like this coming out of the blue, nobody expected it. And just a couple years back, this was the dynasty team on paper, right? I had just come off a Super Bowl against the 49ers, and they locked up their quarterback long-term. They locked up all these key pieces. They brought back a lot of their starters, really weren't missing anybody. You saw last offseason after losing the Super Bowl to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, improved that offensive line, did everything in their power to solidify themselves as a solid contender for the next couple of years, and everything looked like it was going the right way. And then this news happens today, and in less than 2 hours, Tyreek Hill is traded from this team. And now where do the Chiefs stand? Because you look at the AFC as a whole. The AFC is stacked with good talent, good quarterback play. And I would say if there's 16 teams in the AFC, I would say 10 or 11 of them are playoff contenders. And maybe 5 of them are Super Bowl contenders, I would say, is a good estimate. Now you look at this Chiefs team. You look at the AFC West in the last week. To the Raiders, you got Chandler Jones, you got Devontae Adams. Huge, huge moves.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the Chargers, you got J.C. Jackson, one of the best corners in the league. You got Mike Williams, re-signed him. And then you bring in Khalil Mack to go alongside of Joey Bosa, which is going to be a nasty, nasty defense and going to be a quarterback nightmare. You go to the Broncos. They acquire Russell Wilson and are still in the works with some other key free agents to improve upon that team. You look at the Chiefs. Haven't really done anything. And now you lose your number 1 wide receiver. And not just lose him, but they've slowly started to lose other pieces as well. I've lost Jaron Reed on that defensive interior that made them so stacked in the front 4. Lost out on Charvarius Ward. Lost out on a Tyrann Mathieu. Mm-hmm. Now you lose out on a DeMarcus Robinson, one of your receivers, to the Raiders. A Byron Pringle. You still have Hardman there, but now you lose Tyreek Hill too. And so it leads me to ask you this question. Are the Chiefs the worst team in the AFC West? I want to get you guys' thoughts.
I think if there's any team that's due for a letdown in that division, with that question, it's the Chiefs. And I was kind of thinking that before this trade happened. And now, with all those losses they had, I mean, sure, Patrick Mahomes can probably steal a win or two for the Chiefs, maybe more than that, because the man is still a talented quarterback, but if I were to base this on paper, and keep in mind the words that I'm saying, base this on paper, yeah, I probably would say that the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the worst teams in the AFC West. Because let's not forget, Patrick Mahomes doesn't play defense. He lost a lot of his weapons, so enough said. And you know what? I think the Chiefs are one of those teams that just goes to show you, there's such a thing as judging the next dynasty way too soon. We never learn. Like, we saw it with the Seahawks. We saw it with the Packers after Rodgers won it. Every time we say, oh, dynasty in the making, it never works. So let that be a cautionary lesson for all you guys.
Mm-hmm. James, your thoughts? Are the Chiefs the worst team in the AFC West?
My thoughts, and I said this a while back.
You did. James is a magician when it comes to this.
I said this a while back. I think during playoff season, the Chiefs are on their downfall.
You said it against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. You said they're going to hit the wall, and you were right.
I can't believe you got that.
They hit the wall, and they slammed into the wall at this point. They threw it in reverse, and they slammed themselves right against it again. I am sorry to the Chiefs fans, but if you want a number one wide receiver, why don't you go ask Jackson Mahomes? It seems like he knows how to dance when he scores touchdowns and everything else. So why don't you go ask him to play? But no, on a serious note, they're not going. It's going to be very tough for them this season to be as well as they have. The West has just became stacked. Yes, a lot of people are going to say they're still the favorites with Mahomes, with Kelsey. Yeah, okay, that's all you got mostly. I'm sorry, you're losing pieces. Your defense wasn't as strong as it's been in the years past. We saw that this season. You lost a defensive guy. You're probably going to lose some more. Pat Mahomes, sorry, maybe you shouldn't taken the $140 million in contract or whatever.
$500 million.
Yeah,
500.
Thank you. $500 million. Maybe you spread that wealth around. Oh, listen, I'll take a pay cut to keep Tyreek. I'll take a pay cut to keep so and so. Yada 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 down the line. This is what we see. This is why Brady's also so long in the league. Let alone he takes the pay cuts for his players. I don't want to compare Mahomes and Brady because he's making X amount and Brady, sometimes barely makes.
Brady's not making anything. I think that contract with the Bucs, he's making like $25 million, which is ridiculous. Tom Brady should be making like $85 million.
Exactly. So we look at both of those standpoints and be like, he's taking a pay cut, he's making less in order to keep some of these players around. We saw this when he was in New England. Kansas City is in deep trouble. Everybody was riding high. Yeah, at certain points, I was riding high on them. So are Mahomes. Different play, a more wilder play. It's nice to see. Yes. But now it's coming that the Chiefs fans are going to start regretting paying Mahomes so much money because this is only the beginning. And I'm probably playing with some magic again. This is the only beginning. You're going to see this year the Chiefs are going to be they're going to be a 500 team. I don't know how far above 500, but there's going to be a lot of games that they're going to be losing to where they should be winning when you have a number one wide receiver in hell. Mahomes, fantasy talk, Mahomes and Hill were the number one, number two combo. If you draft Mahomes, you should go after Hill and get you a whole bunch of fantasy points. That's not the play this year. I know that's a completely different thing. You want to go after Kyle, like you were saying, and Adams, a Carr, somewhere along those lines. But the Chiefs are going to be I guess there's 4 teams. They are going to be the worst team in the AFC West. At times it won't look like it, but this season they will be.
And I just want to break down the 2022 matchups a little bit. Obviously not go over the games, but just run through the schedule. In no order either. They play the Cardinals, which is a tough game. They play Denver twice, obviously. But they play the Chargers twice, the Raiders twice. All tough games. They play the Texans. That's a win. They play the Colts, but now the Colts got their quarterback. So they play the Jaguars. That's a win. They play the Tennessee Titans. That could be a win. They play the Rams. That's a tough game. They play the Seattle Seahawks. That should be a win. They play the 49ers, the Bengals, the Bills, and the Buccaneers. In those 4 games, they could go 0-4. They could go 4-0. They could win one of those games. They could win all those games. Those are all really, really tough matchups,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're looking at it when there's no number ones left on the market right now, and you're looking at a receiving core of McCole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster for the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not a very good look. And listen, they got a lot of draft picks. That's the beauty part in this trade with Tyreek Hill. They got a lot of draft capital, especially in this year. They have 3 additional picks in this year's draft from that trade, one of which is the 29th overall selection, which is 1 pick in front of their pick because they hold the 30th as well. That's their own pick. And in a deep wide receiver class, you know, you could build your receiving core up a little bit, but I hate to break it to everybody, you're not finding another Tyreek Hill.
No.
You're not. And how do I know that? Because nobody's ever seen what Tyreek Hill is before in the NFL.
Exactly.
This is the first time. So you're not finding a replacement for Tyreek Hill. You're just not, unfortunately. But I would have to agree with you guys. I think the Chiefs are the worst team in the AFC West at this time. You know, we kind of saw the slide a little bit last year. There was some worries about the Chiefs when they started losing all those games in the beginning of the season, and they had that 8-0 run, but a lot of those games were easier games, not really any tough opponents. And then we saw how they kind of played in the playoffs. Again, everybody forgets when they start minimizing the magnitude of Tyreek Hill. You know why they beat the Buffalo Bills in arguably the greatest playoff game ever? Because of Tyreek Hill, because he ran for what was it, like a 15 or 20 yard pass? He turned it into an additional 50 yards after the catch,
something like that,
and ran it in for a touchdown. So missing that threat is going to be so tremendous, and I truly do not believe that is a replaceable threat.
No.
And I don't know how they'll perform when I look at the AFC West. And like you said, James, with the Chiefs, on paper, this whole AFC West is on paper, all star-studded, but all on paper, nothing proven. The only proven is the Chiefs right now. We're losing Tyreek Hill, and then you compare them to these other teams, it's not going to put them in a good situation. And I think that they are, at best, I think they are the 3rd best team in this division, and at worst, I think they're the 4th. I think they are. They don't have – nothing is screaming to me right now saying that they're in a good position right now, and I don't think any Chiefs fan would disagree with that. But guys, any final words on this segment here, this little Tyreek Hill breakdown, and you know about this Chiefs as a whole, and what we could potentially see in the future for them, and if they will still remain this perennial contender, in which we thought was the case just a couple years back, and even just a day ago, as one of the best teams in the AFC. Any final thoughts?
You're going to see a lot of interceptions this year from Mahomes. Juju isn't as fast as Hill.
Nobody's as fast as Hill.
That's what I'm saying.
What was proven in Pittsburgh as well is that Juju cannot be the number 1. So the Chiefs need to figure it out very quickly.
So you're going to see a lot of interceptions. You're going to see Pat Mahomes struggling a decent amount, but we'll move on.
Another thing, remember how at the beginning of the season when the Chiefs were struggling, he was forcing a lot of throws?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off on what James is saying, I can see a lot of that happening for the Chiefs. But big loss for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know that they really got a great return. But with that having been said, if you're the Dolphins, this could potentially be a W if all goes right. I'm not gonna like 100% guarantee it for the Dolphins, but they're definitely a better team, but I can also see why there are people who say the Dolphins made a mistake.
Mm-hmm. And to round out real quick as well, I think that, you know, and I've stood by this statement as well, is that draft picks are great, and I love draft picks. But if you give me the option to have the proven talent, give me the proven talent all day long.